our normal terrestrial provider of broadband have let us down. We have a contract with them, and our service provider tonight is up and down like a yo-yo, so you'll have to bear with us. So we've been delayed, and we've now ironed out what we think are the technical difficulties. However, back to more matters more mundane. We've a wonderful lineup of guests tonight on the show. We've my good friend Ken Wheelen.
Hello, Alan.
Ken is a world-class fisheries limnologist. He's a specialist in all matters relating to salmon, sea trout and brown trout, but he's also an author and a fantastic game fisherman in his own right. We've got John Quinlan. John is a bass master, a sea bass master from down in Kerry, and he's going to be imparting us with his tips and all that matters in relation to how to go about this amazing species of fish, something I know very little about. The sea bass is a predatory fish and are found along the west and the southwest of Ireland, and more. We'll deal with that later on. I've got Barry Darby, a good friend of mine, who's going to be telling us how he got on the Pike Classic. We'll be giving you the results of that. We've also got Ad Swe, my great friend from Holland. He's a world-class painter, pike fisherman, but also he's the man who really brought fly fishing for pike and predatory fish into the 21st century. But without further ado, let's get down to matters with Ken. Ken, I'll just introduce you again. You've come down to visit with me today, and tell me what you've been up to in the last while.
Well, the last while has been absolutely frantic. I really, at this stage of my life, I should be slowing down. I'm actually accelerating. I started off this year by getting an opportunity to go for 4 full weeks to New Zealand. So it was my second trip to New Zealand. And I had thought 2 years ago that the North Island was special. The South Island was just absolutely mind-blowing, fantastic. So I had 3 weeks of fishing, just indulging myself. And I had a week then working in the university, which was also very closely linked with fishing. But that was a fantastic experience. And then quite unexpectedly during the summer then, I got to spend almost 3 weeks in Russia working on the Kola Peninsula.
I'm envious.
Came home for a week and then ended up going for 10 days to Slovenia. So I really have had...
You're globe-trotting.
Well, globe-trotting, but I've had the year you could only dream about. So it's been fantastic and I really enjoyed it. Learned an awful lot.
Your last big job was with the Atlantic Salmon Trust, is that correct?
Yeah.
Explain to me what you're the director of that.
I'm the research director of it.
Okay.
So the Atlantic Salmon Trust I joined about 5 years ago. I work part-time with the Atlantic Salmon Trust and then I run my own consultancy. I moved out of the Marine Institute and started up my own business about 5 years ago. The Atlantic Salmon Trust is an interesting group and strange to relate, not just myself but my brother as well. We've had a connection with it since it was first formed. Because there was a friend of my brother who was an Irish guy called Jerry Haydock, and Jerry was the first director of the Atlantic Salmon Trust. And the Atlantic Salmon Trust is a charity. It's based in England, but the scope of its work is much, much broader.
It's pan-European.
Pan-European, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the idea is to try and raise funding to make sure that the gaps in the research areas in relation to wild salmon and sea trout are filled. And it's nice because it is a very precise set of criteria that it has to fulfill. Really, I think you could look on us as science brokers. We don't actually do the work ourselves, but we're in the middle trying to bring together all of the interest groups, bring together the funding, bring together ideas. And my colleague Ivor Llewellyn does a fantastic job in putting on all sorts of different conferences and workshops. Probably one of the most successful ones we've ever had was one that we ran last November in relation to stocking. And stocking is really seriously controversial.
Now, you're staying with us on the show tonight,
yeah.
But I want to also hear about your angling adventures on these great trips.
Oh, yes.
So we'll keep in touch with that. Now, before we go any further, we've got Ad Swe over in Holland. And earlier, I got caught up with Ad. I hadn't seen him for a long time. And Ad, as I mentioned, has brought fly fishing for pike into the 21st century, and he's really made it a specialism for him in Holland, and he's brought it into Ireland, Britain and other places, and he's also a wonderful artist, and he's trained in the academy in Holland. So let's go and meet Ad Swe. Ad Swe has been a great friend of mine for many, many years, and he's been over to Ireland. He's a terrific traveller to Ireland and a great supporter of all things Irish for about 25 years, perhaps 30 years now. But Ad is best known for his great love of northern pike, Esox lucius, and his passion is fishing for them with big streamer flies. Ad, you're very welcome to Talk.TV.
Okay, thank you.
Ad, how did it all start? Tell me about your early life, where you were born, what town you grew up in, and your early days and introduction to fishing.
I was born in Scheveningen, a little fishing town next to the big city The Hague, in the West Country, near the sea. and my mother bought me a rod. I think I was 6 or something. But well, I didn't. I was fishing in a park, you know. And then my mother died, and my father died, and
At
I
what age
was.
was this that this double tragedy took place?
I don't know. I was 9 when I was an orphan,
Oh wow!
and but I was very kindly picked up, so to speak, by an aunt and an uncle. And that uncle, he was the angler. He
Okay.
learned me a lot, teach me a lot about fishing, about bird watching, about seeking lapwing ikes and stuff like that. And so he was the one who stirred up the fire, you know, so to speak.
And at what
That's the,
age did you?
that's the way too. Pardon?
Yeah, at what age did you discover fly fishing and that you could actually fish for pike with a fly rod?
I was I was working in a tackle shop in Zwolle, the town I lived in, and the dog. Shut up, you idiot! And in that tackle shop, I did that to pay for my studies on the Academy of Arts. Anyway, I started building rods myself and stuff like that, and I met some guys who were fly fishermen, and they taught me how to cast and they taught me how to fish, and then I started fishing for rudd and for roach later on and for pike, you know.
And often in everyone's life, in my life in particular, when I was a young guy, like adults would take me under his wing and brought me fishing because my father wasn't an angler. And in your situation, was there one person in particular who brought you out?
Yes, my uncle, so to speak. He had a boat, and we went very often to the river with his boat and fished for whatever there was to fish for.
Okay.
Bream and
Now,
tench
Holland,
and
to me, is a
everything.
very densely populated country with about 17 and a quarter million people in an
Yeah.
area roughly the size of probably, Munster here, which is probably the size of Belgium in Europe. So in that contextual way, it's a very, very densely populated country. And yet
Yeah.
you've got wonderful freshwater fishing resources with giant pike and a lot of very healthy fish stocks.
Yeah.
So
The
for
river I
you
live
guys,
at,
Ad,
100 meters behind my house is the River IJssel.
the Isle River.
It was a very polluted river in the 60s and the 70s, and now it's crystal clean and loaded with fish, zander, pike, whatever, you know. And you wouldn't believe, if you stand on the shores of the river, you wouldn't believe you were in Holland. It could be anywhere. It could be the River Shannon, you know.
Wow, wow.
So yeah, and on the other side of the road is the oldest polder van Holland. That is the Polder Masterbroek, which is very good for pike fishing as well. So I'm rather pleased to live where I am, you know.
Now, Ad, over the years, you have become famous as well as a great artist. You do landscapes, you do portraits, but you do individual stuff on wildlife and very quirky stuff because you're an artist and a graphic artist, and I've seen a lot of your work, and it's beautiful stuff. How did you
Thank you.
How did you get the creative bug? Was that always there? Were you always a creative child?
Yeah, my first drawing was a very big thing on the on the wall in our house. It was very Picasso-like, but anyway, it was the first. I must have been 5 or something like that. But that I remember that my father was laughing loud because I ruined, the wall. And but I always like to draw. You know, it's in your veins, and if you like to draw, you can draw. Then somebody will say, "Oh, you're a good draughtsman." Maybe. Then anyway, I went to the Academy of Arts when I was rather old because I had to. I was in the army as well because we had to then in those years. And after that, I started to go to the Academy of Arts, and I met my wife there because she's an artist as well. And no, I liked it, you know. And I studied lithography, drawing on stones.
It's a wonderful gift you have, Ad. In relation to we'll just talk about technical stuff now because we're short for time. We're going to have you on a regular basis, Ad. And in fact, we're going to try and get you over during November to Ireland and try and do maybe a master class with you. But if you were giving advice to, say, anyone today who would like to try their hand at fly fishing for pike, give me a few of the basic tools that they need to buy.
good rod is one. A floating line, maybe. I don't know, of course, where somebody is fishing. And buy or tie yourself some nice flies. Always use a wire. And there's only one advice: go out and do it.
Go out and do it.
So,
And what weight rod would you start with for the beginner? Would you go for a 9-weight rod?
no, I think an 8-weight will be fair enough.
An
But,
8-weight
of
rod
course,
with a
I
float,
have
with a
all
floating,
these rods.
with a
I
floating
just
8-weight
bought me
line.
an 8-weight because the other one was broken. I think the 8-weight is the most used rod in pike fishing. And if I go to Ireland, where the pike is very strong, I bring my 9 and my 10.
And then, and what you want then is a reel with a wide arbor to hold all the backing,
Yeah.
and then the line.
Yeah, I have a couple of reels, but I use the most reels I use are Hardies. And I just bought me a new one because my Evo Tech was broken and I needed a new one. So I'm waiting for it. I hope it will arrive tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. To be honest.
Okay, people can log on to adswe.com to see all about your beautiful art, all your
Okay.
creative stuff, and what you do in the world of fishing. Some of the lovely trophy shots you have of fish and rudd and asp, and your paintings of some of these lovely catches that you've made down the years. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to have you on as a regular guest on the show, and with the technology that we have nowadays, we can see you and talk to you on Skype, and we can link up that way, and then hopefully get you over here, body and soul, over to Ireland in November, and we'll take you out for a day on the lake and a day on the river, as well as do a studio session here at Crooked Wood in County Westmeath. Ad Swe, you're a great friend of mine. You have been to me all the years. You've taught me an awful lot about fly fishing for pike. I'm still very much an amateur at it. And listen, my very best wishes for continued success with all that you do in the creative world that you're in, and we'll hook up with you again in the near future. Ad Swe, thank you very much for coming on fishtalk.tv.
You're very welcome.
Welcome back to fishtalk.tv. Remember, this is an interactive show. We designed the show specifically for you, the viewer. So you can tweet us at fishtalktv, go and visit us on our Facebook page, or keep watching us on youtube.com/fishtalklive. And remember, we'll have a podcast available for the show. So if any of you out there are a bit out of kilter with the timings, because we had a major delay with technical difficulties with our own service provider here, really let us down. And iBub, who were looking after us last week, were fantastic. And I want to stress that fact, that iBub Communications in Northern Ireland, first-class company, no difficulties with them, but our own group here have let us down badly. Anyway, back to matters more mundane. Ken and I are still going to have a chat. You're fishing. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, I was really, really privileged. I love a situation where I find something new. So I was actually asked by colleagues to go to Russia to do some research work with them. And some of the really better known rivers in Russia, they know very little about the upper reaches, the upper catchments.
Okay.
So the job was for a little over 2 weeks to go into some of these upper catchments and get a feel for what we were going to find. And normally when you go into these very remote areas, I don't know why it is, but you expect them to be fairly barren.
Yeah.
And as we went in, the only way to go in was by helicopter. So we had...
Big old Sikorsky's.
no, these were beautiful, neat little four-seaters. Really neat little things. They would land on a sixpence. So it was great. So you could go from one location to another.
Yeah.
The first morning, as we started to fly over some of the lower lochs, and it's impossible to describe how big this area is. There's 1 million acres here.
Wow.
And all of it is dotted with tiny ponds, lakes, large pools, big lakes. So it was all still water, moving water, still water, moving water. But as we went over the still water and as we went further in, I realised these were very shallow. And I could see these lovely beds of weed.
So they're little pot lakes.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And then I realised that the rock formations and so on were very, very like our limestones. And I found out after I came back that there's a mineral there called apatite, which is calcium phosphorus. So it's both calcium and phosphorus.
And phosphorus.
So
it's very crumbly.
Absolutely. You can mix it all together and you have these brilliantly rich lakes. And it was a godsend because anybody who doesn't believe that pike and perch and trout and char can live together would need to have come with me. We found large pike.
Music to my ears.
We found large perch, really large perch up to well over 1 kilo.
Wow.
We found trout, fabulous brown trout. I knew we were going to encounter them, but they get them up to about 12 or 14 pounds.
Fantastic.
We saw them to about 6. I got the most beautiful resident Arctic char to about 3 pounds.
Gorgeous.
And each of the lakes had their own component of the catchment, but they were all in balance. Nobody has messed with this. Nobody has touched this.
And I've always been pounding
And
that drum.
it was lovely. It was really nice to
Isn't that
see it in
great?
action, and I really enjoyed it. But the icing on the cake was by accident, we found out. We were in the camp one night and somebody said to me, "We had a good night last night, sea trout fishing." And I said, the ears pricked up. I said, "Sea trout?" And they said, "Yeah." They showed me a photograph of a 14-pound sea trout.
Oh, wow.
So I went down to the estuaries with the guys, and over about 4 or 5 visits to various river estuaries, we got fish up to about 7 pounds. The most beautiful sea trout you've ever seen, and really big numbers of sea trout, but they were the fattest sea trout I've ever got.
So a really balanced, healthy fishery.
Beautiful, and I have some pictures up on my website now.
Where can people see that, Ken?
They can see it on the website.
Give me your web address.
So it's www.kenwheelen.info.
So that's kenwheelen.info, folks, for more on Ken. Ken's staying with us tonight. Now, one of my favourite sectors of the show is the next one. It's my good friend Pascal Brissot, the Frenchman who's more Irish than the Irish themselves, up there in his beautiful creation, Watermill Lodge on the shores of Lough Erne. And Pascal's take on doing a different twist on shore lunches is something to behold. We're all learning that he can now produce something in 7 or 8 minutes that really is so appetizing that why would you bring the old tired sandwich with you? So let's go and see what Pascal has in store for me this week. Pascal, we're back at the shore having Pascal's shore snacks. What are you going to do for me today?
But today is very simple. It's a penne with some bit of chicken on a mushroom sauce.
So it looks to me like you've got pre-cooked already chunks of chicken, is that right?
Yes,
From maybe
is that
leftovers?
Right? Yes, leftovers if you wish, or you take some fillet of chicken, you cook for 6-7 minutes at home, you let it cool and you dice it.
You've mushrooms,
Mushroom.
you've got penne pasta.
Penne pasta already cooked as well.
Already cooked, okay.
Same because when you are fishing you don't have time to cook them, of course. It's better to just reheat it.
Now, as you know, I love food. Will you take me through what we're going to do?
Of course, of course, take a nice copper pan or put some olive oil.
So quite a generous tablespoon, roughly?
A good tablespoon,
Good
yes,
tablespoon
yes.
of
Because now we
olive
will always
oil.
start with the mushroom. The mushroom need a lot of heat to get brown and give a nice crunchy taste.
Okay, so the old mushrooms going in.
Yeah, they're going in first. Here you are.
In the hot pan, I can see that, sizzling away. So you're going to brown them?
We go to brown them, yes, of
Okay.
course. For 2-3 minutes. Nice smell already.
Already I'm going to get the aroma.
You see the nice color of the
Yeah.
mushroom?
Browning
Not
up.
boiling, browning.
Yeah.
Keep all the flavor inside the mushroom.
And again, I want to reiterate this, your windshield that you've developed. There's quite a breeze blowing off the
Completely,
lake.
yes.
And there's no impact on this. It's
None at all.
super.
None at all.
Yeah.
And even you can even heat your hands if you wish.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
Voilà. We'll add more oil for the chicken.
Okay. Now, Pascal, I am not very well up on these matters, but I was always told reheating chicken is very dangerous. How do we make sure
No,
that
it's
it's a safe
not.
issue?
It's not at all.
Not at all.
No.
It was well cooked already.
It's
Is
well
that safe?
cooked already. It's completely safe.
Okay.
Well, what's the problem is reheat it on cold and reheat it twice.
Okay.
That's where is the problem. When you cool it once, you can just eat it and eat it straight away.
And then he's okay.
Yes.
That's good to know. See, I did not know that. Lovely chunks of chicken. Wow.
Yeah.
That looks super. I'll take that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. So you're literally now at the moment, you've browned the mushroom
Yes.
in the olive oil.
Yes.
And you're literally just going to warm this guy. Is that correct? The
Completely.
chicken.
You want
chunks.
to finish it.
Okay.
Yes. And you stir with it.
And I'm just keeping an eye on the time because, as you know, I am one of those anglers who hates giving up my fishing time, but we're losing very little. We're only here about 8-9 minutes and we're
Even
already
less, even
almost
less, yes.
cooked.
Mix of salt and spice already.
You've a bit of black pepper in there, I see.
Yeah, with black peppers, Chinese spice, some salt, and sel de Guérande.
So what's
it's like
that?
flour of salt.
Like flour salt,
Yeah,
sel de Guérande.
you find that in Tesco, Dunstore, and everywhere.
Anywhere,
It
okay.
adds some flavor as well.
And is that a very unique flavour?
It is completely. It's like a floury salt.
Salt,
technically.
okay. Very fine salt.
Completely.
And if I did not have that, it wouldn't make a big difference to this?
No, not a big.
No,
No, of course. You can
okay.
just use ordinary salt.
No,
A bit of.
I'm always impressed when you do this.
We are hiding.
Is this for me? As
no,
you know,
no,
I,
it's not
I'm-
for you, sir.
Also
Sorry.
not. I'm driving, remember.
No. Will be, but I have a.
So you're going to flame this, are you?
Hopla!
Wow.
I have a.
This looks very exotic, boys.
Voilà.
Oh,
A bit
wow.
of brandy. You let it boil for a while.
Oh, wow. So you're flaming it off.
We flame it off.
Get rid of all the alcohol.
You get your warm hands as well. But don't waste energy.
Yeah.
Voila, look at that. Lovely.
Looks very exotic.
Now, why not to be exotic when you are
This is
fishing?
one,
You know,
yeah. I'm all for it.
Voila.
So what now we're going to add in?
Now we add the cream, or you add the cream with some bisto.
Bisto?
Bisto and cream mixed
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
On this mix, you add it now.
And is there mushrooms in here?
Yes, a little bit of mushroom as well
okay.
to add.
This looks lovely.
Because we are 3 big eaters there, I have to make it.
You have to be very careful now what you say there. You might be making aspersions about my weight. This looks wonderful, Pascal. Again, this is very easy stuff, isn't it, really?
Very easy.
Chopped up mushroom again,
Yes.
with cream.
Yes. And here, look.
And if, for example, somebody say did not drink alcohol, would it be okay not to use the
Yes, completely.
cognac? There's no problem.
We not, yeah. Cognac or even white wine is really, really.
Okay.
We can do that without alcohol completely.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, Pascal, to me now, you flambéed this with the cognac.
Yes.
Why would you do that?
But why the flambé is just purely cosmetic.
Okay.
Yes.
You're
On,
trying to
on
be-
your
you're-
two hands.
You're trying to be fancy.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Just
well,
fancy and
I'm good
cosmetic.
with that.
No,
Okay.
you don't have to to flame to add some flavor, because what you flame technically is the alcohol evaporates,
Yeah.
and you just flame it
But if you had a bunch of friends with you, you could actually do it just to have a nice impact.
completely. And
All
it's
right.
a warm atmosphere.
Yeah.
You see, because you have the flame.
It looks wonderful.
It give you heat, especially when you're on a boat. You are all very close to each other. And the flame is quite nice because you
I
straight
can
away
imagine,
warm.
yeah.
And after, of course, it just gives a little bit of a flavor for.
Now,
the
are we
sauce.
reducing here? Is that the idea?
Yes, we reduce the juice a little
Okay.
bit before you finish with your penne.
Okay. And again, this is already pre-cooked.
Yes, of
Just
course.
in salted boiling water.
Exactly.
10 minutes, drain it off into your tub, and then just add in and reheat.
Exactly.
So it's very straightforward.
Very straightforward, very simple.
Even a fool like me can do this.
Yes, I guess.
Pascal, you're not meant to agree with that. You should say you're not a fool,
No,
Alan.
you are not a fool.
But this
Sorry,
is great.
Alan.
This is great.
All
So
right.
you're talking really from start to finish, 8-10 minutes.
Max.
Anyone can do this.
Maximum.
Anyone can do
Maximum,
this.
yeah, of course,
I
maximum.
love it.
See, we put your pasta
And this is
now.
this is a feast now, a real feast.
Yes.
You could feed a rugby team with this.
Oh, you can, yeah.
Terrific, Pascal. Yeah,
Wow.
the chicken. Oh wow.
And you
Again,
see, very
the
nice
camera
smell.
cannot pick it up. So you folks sitting at home watching this,
Completely.
you're missing out. Unbelievable. I'd pay money just to stand here. Yeah, it's great.
Voila. See,
Wonderful.
Very good. We,
Yeah.
Just 1 minute. Just
we've
before
had-
I dish it, I will
yeah.
put my tomato.
Because we
on
had
my mix.
you and I had a long day today
Can
with
I
the
take
guys.
that? Yeah, yes.
So this is a really nice break for us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
I'm really
yeah,
appreciating
yeah,
it. And we're not losing much fishing time, which is very important.
No, just 20, half hour max.
And you're back out on the water.
Completely.
Yeah.
With a full belly and with hot food. You feel
Now
very warm.
That's the important bit,
completely.
isn't it? Your hot food, good, nourishing food.
Completely.
Yeah, this is
Just that.
wonderful.
It's just take 5 minutes and on that,
Yeah.
it, you know.
And you have a healthy food. And if you have children with you, as I say, or you've got friends or a girlfriend or your wife or whatever, it makes the day.
It makes the day for sure. And you can even, get some nice ladies there. You know, impress them.
Now you want to be very careful. You know, you might get a black eye yet when you
No,
go back.
That's okay.
I'm looking forward to this now. So this is the final touch.
Yeah, the final touch. This is warming up.
Okay.
Now. Wow.
You know that the crew who are with me today, they have big appetites. And
Oh, but that's no problem.
they will eat the carpet in your boat if you didn't feed them properly.
Yeah, you will
So
see.
you're going to have enough here for a whole rugby team.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
I will show you even the way it looks, because on top of everything, it's looking
Oh,
also very nice.
Look at that. It's a lovely garnish, isn't it, on the
Exactly.
top? Superb.
Voila.
So we get the plates ready.
Yes. Can you help me,
Pascal?
please, sir?
I
Yeah.
will, surely.
Thank you. I hide the wind, you cannot get cold.
Oh wow.
Voilà,
That's brilliant.
monsieur.
And there, and I'll bring it over to the boys.
Yes, that's very nice.
That's it. I'll
Thank
go.
you. Service.
I'll go off. Service. Here we
Service.
go, guys. Ding
Alan,
ding.
hurry
Dinner.
up.
Now that's why you know I love that segment, because Pascal Brissot is a bundle of laughs. Ken, your fishings are one thing, one part of your life. Your science is another part of your life, but you're also a wonderful author. And some of your books I have in my collection, and I savour them.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Now, you've been up to a few little scribblings lately. What have you been up to?
I have indeed, yeah. Again, since I left state employment and started my own company, I've been thinking a lot about writing, and I have hopefully a couple more books in me. But I was lucky enough this year now to publish 2 books. So the first one is really goes down to my co-author Chris McCulley.
The famous guy, Chris McCulley.
Most of the credit will go to Chris. Chris came over to interview me when I was still working in the west of Ireland about sea trout, and he mentioned to me that he had in the back of his mind he'd like to do a sea trout book, and then he got back to me and said, well, he'd like to do something different. So we did something different. So we put together a book that in some ways resembles the Angler in Ireland in that it's a nice mixture of things. It's a dipping book. It's not a book you would sit down and read right through. So it brings people through all of our favourite sea trout waters. And the most fun we had really was doing the sea trout fishing on the East Coast. Wow. He did not believe that we had really good sea trout fishing on the East Coast. And one of the best evenings we had was at the back of the bus garage in Donnybrook on the River Dodder.
No.
Absolutely. And he
in Urbanville.
Absolutely. And it was really good. And we had sea trout, thanks to Pat Kneff, who works with the local angling club. Thanks to Pat, we had fish up to 1 kilo. And
in the Dodder?
Absolutely.
In Dublin City.
And I did a radio programme on the Dodder in August, and these things just don't happen normally, but I got 11 sea trout during the radio interview. We did the radio interview in the dark, and it's stuffed with sea trout. So it's fantastic, and full credit to all the authorities.
All involved.
We're always ragging them and giving out to them about not doing their job, and they've done a fabulous job in cleaning up the river. So that made it very exciting, and it made it exciting for Chris, because he thought of sea trout as being in the west of Ireland, in pristine lakes. And there he was in the Dodder on the night that the exam results came out for the Leaving Cert. Drunk teenagers all around us. We got to see an otter who came out to give out to me over catching a sea trout. Wow. We saw a fox, and as we arrived, we saw 2 herons. And he blew his mind completely and totally.
You could have been in a wilderness in Urbanville.
That's right, absolutely.
Isn't that wonderful? Really
good. And then as well this year, a friend of mine, Maureen Cremon, she asked would I get involved with her in a cookbook. And she did a lovely recipe book just on salmon.
On salmon.
In memory of her dad.
Sailor.
Absolutely. Her dad was a gillie in the west of Ireland, so he wanted to do something special for him. And she said to me, can you do an introduction? And I thought about it for a while, and I said, well, would it be nice maybe to do between each section of the book a bit about salmon? So we did the kind of social history of salmon, salmon caught in the commercial fisheries, a little bit on angling, the life cycle of the salmon, and we just blended the bits together. That sounds like
a fantastic book.
So it's a bit of a read, and there's fabulous recipes in it.
Great recipes.
And
so there's something for everyone.
Great enjoyment out of that. It was just so very different. And I'd say Pascal would love it because there's lots of snacks in it that you can do very quickly. Yes. So I'd say he would enjoy that.
Well, folks, Ken will be with us throughout the show tonight. Now, the next gentleman we're going to meet is somebody I caught up with earlier. His name is John Quinlan, and John lives down in a magnificent setting down in Kerry in the southwest part of Ireland, in Waterville. And John specialises in sea bass, and he really is a sea bass master. And he's been imparting some of his tips and knowledge to me, and hopefully you too will pick up on these tips, and you too can start participating in this very exciting new portion in the sport of what I call the wonderful world of sport fishing, sea bass fishing. John Quinlan, you're down in County Kerry and you have specialised in sea bass. It's a species that's quite new to anglers here in Ireland and across Europe in many ways. The concept of fishing from the shore with both lure and fly into the surf. Can you tell us about what's involved, please?
Okay, well, we use similar tackle to what you would do maybe for salmon fishing, although slightly lighter. We tend to use rods about 8.5 feet, almost always with braided line, this is for spinning, and shallow diving lures. Fly fishing is mostly done with intermediate lines. You do need chest waders, and you need to know your way around the sea because often you have to wade in quite deep, so you need to be aware of the tide. It could be quite a dangerous pastime if you're not careful.
Now, you have 3 T's as a rule that you decide upon when you're going to look at a new sheet of water, when you arrive at a beach, an inflowing tide coming in, flooding tide. The 3 T's, can you tell us what they are, please?
Well, the first thing is the tide. It's very important to know what the tide is doing. You have to get yourself a good tide timetable and know when the tide is coming in and the tide is going out. That's important for safety, but it's also important for the fish. Fish tend to feed more on a flooding tide, although you can catch them on an ebb tide also. Having suitable tackle is also very important. Tackle that's balanced, that will throw the lures you want to throw, and land the size of fish that you want to land. There's no point having tackle that will cope with a tarpon when you're only catching fish of 2 or 3 kilos. The most important thing of all is the terrain, the type of ground you fish over, whether it's rocky ground, a mix of rock and sand, or just pure sand. You have to take that into account. And the best way to find that out is to go there on a very low tide and just walk around and look at the places that you'll be fishing over later on. Those are the 3 T's that you have to take into account.
John, what approach is it a mobile approach you adopt when you're fishing, and what signs are you looking for to give you confidence to stay with it in one piece of water? If, for example, you arrive and it looks very, very inviting, what are you looking for and your approach?
Okay, well, the fish that we're fishing for, the bass, is always on the move, unless it finds food. So the important thing is to try and find somewhere, try and isolate the places that have food from the places that don't have food or are unlikely to have food. So you're looking for any sign that will help you. You're looking for structure in the water, be it gullies or rocks or weed beds. You're looking for swirls on the surface, if you're lucky enough to see those, which will indicate fish. But you're looking for birds. In the summer months, we have terns that feed on bait fish, and the terns depend on bass and mackerel and other fish to drive up the bait fish to the surface so they can get them. So you're constantly looking out for birds. Cormorants are the same, if you see them feeding in an area. So basically, if you see feeding activity in an area, even from birds, if you know there's bait there, you stay. If you don't see any feeding activity, and if you're not getting bites, then you need to move on. There's no point fishing dead water. You need to move on. There are plenty of places to fish in the sea, so just keep on the move. Bass are often caught quite quickly if you're in the right place.
It's a very nice approach. In fact, I like that sort of mobile sniper approach. Move along, make a number of casts, no response, no follows, no one at home, you move along. Now, what type of lures are we talking about that you use down there?
Most fishing, it's a mixture of soft and hard lures. So hard lures, we've got something a bit like this. It's called a feed shallow. They are shallow diving lures that are designed to cast quite long distances. Generally, they only dive about 30, 40 centimeters under the surface, so you can fish them in quite shallow water, and they tend to cast very well as well. The other type of lure we use are soft plastics, which are ones like this. They don't last as long, but they're much cheaper, and again, they tend to be weedless. The hook is actually inside in the lure, so that the lure can come right through the weed without getting it hooked up. Both of them have their place. A lot of people fish hard lures over the cleaner ground, where they're unlikely to get snagged up, and then they will fish the soft plastic ones where there's more weed and rock, because you're not going to lose those. And some of the lures are quite expensive, so you don't want to lose those.
Are you fishing right in amongst the bladder rack and the kelp beds? Is that what you're aiming at as well?
Right through the middle of it, particularly at high tide in around the reefs and the rocks, you're literally fishing through the holes in the weed. You fish with lures that have the hook right inside in the plastic, in the soft plastic, and you can literally pull it right through the rack weed. You can fish little holes in the weed. You can fish in places with a lure that you couldn't even fish with bait if you do it properly.
Now, what are good times of the year that you'd recommend for somebody like me now, who has a lot of pike fishing gear, stuff for salmon, 8-9 foot rods? In other words, we don't have to go out and buy specialist rods. What we have already will actually suffice for this job. Is that correct?
That's true. The most important thing with all types of fishing, but particularly with bass fishing, is finding the fish. Once you've done that, the next step is always a lot easier. You've got to be fishing in the right spot at the right time, and that just takes time and experience. The longer you spend on the water, the more you learn. So it's a matter of searching, moving, trying some different lures, try some near the surface, use some soft plastics near the bottom to see if the fish are there.
And if you, John, for example, see evidence of good fish further out, do you try to draw them in by maybe creating some sort of surface action with surface poppers or whatever?
You can. Sometimes when I'm guiding for people who are fly fishing, I'll fish a surface lure with no hooks on it because I don't want to catch the fish. And I cast that out, and the fish will sometimes follow that lure. Fish that may be 60, 70 yards out in the sea will follow that lure right into the shore, and that will give a fly angler a chance to...
But certainly I would recommend strongly anyone who's interested in pursuing bass as an add-on to their, interest in fishing from their normal, if it's salmon, trout, pike, whatever it is, you must give this species a real go. They're a wonderful looking fish, they're exciting, it's the harbinger of summertime, and someone like John Quinlan will give you all the information. You're going to short circuit the learning curve by going down and spending some time with John Quinlan. John, we'll be dealing with you and having you on the show throughout the year, and we really are grateful to you for coming on the show today. Very best wishes, and I hope you had a good season.
Thank you very much, Alan, and we'll talk again.
Now, my good friend Barry has joined me in the studio. Barry was a competitor last week in the Earn Pike Fishing Classic, and Barry will have a tale to tell about how he got on. Ken, you have something to review for me this week?
I have indeed, Alan. I'm looking forward to this. This is definitely my favourite book of all time. This is a book called A Man May Fish by T.C. Kingsmill Moore.
It's a beautiful book.
It's a lovely book, and this is the original 1960
Can we show it to the camera
edition.
there?
Of course we can, yes, no problem. I just have a little marker there just to talk a little bit about it, okay? So that's the
Theodore
book.
Kingsmill Moore.
That's right,
A
absolutely.
man of many talents.
He really was, and he was eventually a judge,
Senator?
and a senator.
A senator in the new Ireland of 1922 onwards.
That's right,
and I believe contributed significantly to a lot of the legislation.
Oh, he really did, and anyone who's going through law will come across him, and he'll become a very familiar figure to them. But his absolute and total passion was fishing. And I fell in love with the book very early on. It's beautifully written. There's a very delicate touch to the way the book is written. It's very descriptive and it's very human. And the whole character of Jamesy, his long-term gilly, and the stories about Jamesy and one knocking off the other. And I thought, just reading the book, that I knew Kingsmill Moore. I really felt I knew him.
Yeah.
And just by chance then, in the 80s, I was involved in the purchase of the Erif for the state. And along with the River Erif, we got the most wonderful couple. We got Bridgie, who was the original cook and housekeeper from the lodge, and the gilly, Mickey Kane. Okay, Bridgie and Mickey Kane.
And you were involved in all of this?
I was involved in all of this. And one night I was sitting down with Mickey and I said, Delphi, I said, that fella Kingsmill Moore used to fish in Delphi. Huh. And he grumbled at me. And I knew very well that he wasn't very keen on him. And I said, did you know him? Did I know him? He says, I was his gilly. And I said, well, what was wrong with the man? I give out to you, he says. Give out to you very quickly. And I said, what would he give out about? Or just, he says, he hated getting bait. And I said, really? Oh, he says, any night he got bait, he says, there was no living with him the next day.
Can I, for all of you out there who would not be familiar with that term, bait, it means beaten.
Beaten.
The competitive beaten, just in case.
And I said to him, but I said, he wrote this fantastic book. And then the bombshell. He said to me, never wrote that. And I said, Mickey, what do you mean he never wrote that? I was the wife. And it was obvious in subsequent conversations, Mickey was totally in love with the wife. He thought the wife was a really elegant lady. And
I believe she was a saint.
Absolutely. How she ever married this grumpy old lad. He couldn't harbour any thought of her ever marrying him. So he said to me, he used to write out the notes. I saw him giving the notes to her and she'd write it down. And it's a dreadful thing to say. It's probably not true at all, but it was an interesting twist.
Very interesting.
A very interesting twist.
Yes.
And certainly whoever wrote the book, and all
had a
obviously
lovely touch.
A lovely touch to it.
Yeah.
But also Hugh Falkus was really someone who was very difficult from a personal point of view, and his writings are very like T.C. Kingsmill Moore. So it may very well be that what went down in the book was the real person.
Yeah.
But certainly, as I say, his observational skills, like Falkus, his ability to be able to look at the different colours in terms of the water in the bog lakes in particular in Connemara, and to be able to size up the individual flies like the Kingsmill that he invented and so on, and to get a golden glow by using hackles out of the top of the Kingsmill that actually showed up against the peat water. The man was obviously
a genius, a
Absolutely.
creative genius, wasn't he?
He really was.
But Ken, do you know what I loved about the book when I read it as well many years ago? He actually conveys through the speech of Jamesy, you were almost in the boat with Jamesy, with the West of Ireland brogue, and then you're with this great brilliant mind of Theodore.
Yeah.
And there's almost like a partnership there, but a competitive one.
And very competitive, and there's an interesting edge in it. So that competitiveness that Mickey talked about is obvious from the book. But there's also an element in the book that I think is very interesting, where Kingsmill Moore doesn't appear to be worried about writing against himself. James, he gets one or two up on him.
Yeah, he does.
And it's great. And that makes a really good story.
Yes, it makes him human.
It does. And
Now,
the other thing was that he didn't just, people think he just fished in the west of Ireland. The man, like ourselves, he fished all over the place.
Yes.
And there's beautiful black and white plates in here
yes,
that actually record the Rye water, the Kells Black water, even the bridge over the Corrib in Galway in its heyday.
Yes.
So it's quite unique.
It's a historical book, but it's one of the great classics. What profound impact did it have on a young Ken Wheelen?
Well, originally, all of my family come from Wexford. All of our fishing was in Wexford. And we used to fish during the day with worms in the bottom of the river at Courtown, the Onavara River, for flounders. But we used to see these silverfish jumping. And eventually we realised these were things called sea trout. And I recount in my own sea trout book the story of not my first sea trout, but our first sea trout, because my brother actually caught it. But the story is in the book because it took two of us to land it. But that fish was caught as a result of a man-made fish, because we were driven by this idea of eventually getting fly rods. But that was fine. But the important thing was to get the fish, and the important thing was to get a silverfish. And eventually we got this silverfish, and we had a very, very carefully filled in diary at the time. And I can remember we wrote in very carefully that the fish was 14.5 inches and that it was 1 pound 4 ounces.
I was going to say probably about 1.6, 1.8 or whatever.
Absolutely, and they're quite slim for their size, you know.
And Ken, can I say to you that it is a book that if anyone can get their hands on it through their library, you'd highly recommend it.
I would highly recommend it, both in terms of its content, but also
it's educational.
in terms of style.
And I think the content of the technical way in which he approaches sea trout fishing, from if it's Costello and Fermoil or whatever it is, he's absolutely first class.
Absolutely, and it's really interesting as well that he's a very modern approach to it. It's a very methodical approach, and it's an approach that's very much like A.A. Luce, Fishing and Thinking. It's a thinking approach.
Yes.
There's almost a philosophy.
It's very cerebral.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Isn't it? Ken, you're still with us. You're going to be with us again. We might touch on the book later on. Now, we're going to come to a part of the show that we were actually linked to last week. We were up on Lough Erne, as you know, and the Erne Pike Classic was on at the same time as our first premiere show, and it was a very auspicious occasion for the crew and myself, and we were delighted to have been a part of that. Now, we have the results of that competition, the 3-day tournament that took place, and the first winner is a gentleman from County Longford. He's a County Longford piker, and he's originally from Latvia, I believe, and his name is Liamonas Stoskus, S-T-O-S-K-U-S, and Liamonas Stoskus got a fantastic northern pike of 22 pounds 2 ounces and took first place in this very, very august competition. Second was a Mr. Barry Darby from Mullingar, County Westmeath, who's about 4 feet from me here in the room tonight. And Barry, I'm so proud of you because you're Mr. Consistency. 3 times you've been second now in that great competition.
Yeah, 3 times. I'm lucky enough to catch some good fish in it, and yeah, it's a great.
And you had a 17 pound something or other.
17 pound 6 early on the Saturday morning.
And my understanding was the conditions weren't easy.
No, but it's tough anyhow. Every year up there, it's nearly always in flood, and it can be really tough.
Now we also have Andrew Powell from Armagh, had a 16 pound 15 ouncer. He was knocking on the door of 17 pounds, and he came third in the competition. But it was a fabulous event. I went and filmed some of it with decal personnel, brought me across the river in their boat, and I must say the organisation of the whole thing and the professionalism was second to none, and it's a credit to all involved, from Lakeland Tourism up there, Fermanagh Lakeland Tourism, Decal and Fermanagh District Council. I toss my hat off to you all. Now Barry, you are a piker par excellence, and you're involved in tournaments, but you're also a trophy hunter in what I would call in your downtime. When you're not chasing the tournaments, you're also after the big ones.
Yeah, I am.
Now you've had a few big special fish out of Lough Ree and other places over the years.
I have, yeah. I've been lucky enough to catch some big fish, yeah.
Now, I've often asked people, because I'm fascinated by this, if, for example, you were approached, say, by me, and I ask you, and I know nothing about, say, pike fishing, and I say, Barry, will you take me to such and such a place? And we go out to the water, how and what do you do to try and teach me how to read the water? Like a blank sheet of a lake is very difficult to interpret unless you have electronics.
Well, the way I would I'd approach it, Alan, is if it's a lake I didn't know, and I haven't been on it before, from past examples like fishing other lakes, Lough Oul, Lough Ree and Lough Derravara, and putting in waypoints where I've caught fish before, it's nearly always in the northwestern shore has been productive, very productive.
Why is that?
So weed and vegetation seems to be, it seems to be excellent in the area, and you have food fish, and the pike in turn will be there as well. So it's a good place to be. So that's what I'd concentrate on, the new part of a lake if I didn't know it. Yeah.
So you'd go northwestern shore?
Northwestern shore, yeah.
And are
12, 15 foot of water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you looking for anything like if there was an inflowing stream, would that enhance the prospects?
Yeah, that would, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
They're all things you'd be on the lookout for.
And what sort of lures, like do you go what I would call this sort of milk run approach, this run and gun approach, cover the water, try to see if there's nothing happening for 15 minutes, move on?
Yeah, that would be what I do, yeah.
And give me a few of the lures that you would use as ones that you would use as your go-to lures, confidence lures.
There's a couple of lures here. That's a homemade spoon I made myself.
That's homemade?
Yeah, it's homemade. And
that is very impressive, Barry.
My father got me into making spoons because
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I seen him reap the rewards of making homemade spoons down in Loughree on days when even these baits here that are really realistic, like you have the perch, the Storm 6-inch perch.
Yeah.
The homemade spoon my father had without fish it. If I had 3 pike, he'd have 10 on the spoon.
Is that brass?
That's brass, yeah. It's a kicker board off of a school door in
It is.
town.
So it's a kicker board from the school door.
It's CBS, yeah.
From the Christian Brothers. And Barry, you've just 2 sort of mother of pearl type beads
They're
there.
mother of pearl, yeah, I got them off my mother. She's a dressmaker, so I got them on it.
And I would imagine that this displaces a huge amount of water,
it
so there's
does,
a lot of vibration and pulsing.
Yeah.
And I've had pike to over 20 pound in that spoon, yeah.
And this baby, this is a traditional sort of rubber shad type thing. It's actually perch. It's actually a walleye or perch sort of pattern there. Are these good?
Yeah, they're very good, yeah.
How do you fish this one?
Just cast it back in 10, 15 foot water, cast it back 20 yards and hope for the best.
And you use jerk baits.
Yeah.
Any particular type of jerk bait to use? Is it glide bait or do you like a chop action
I
one?
like the Salmo here, this yellow one.
So it has a swing
very,
action.
Very productive, yeah.
Like a glider type.
Yeah, I have a lot of good fishing over the years.
And
that'd be a go-to bait.
And I know from my own experience of being with you and we fished down the years, you're also very handy with the dead bait, float trolling dead baits.
Yeah, I do. But I've kind of gone away from it now because you lose an awful lot of fish as well. So I do.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. The hookup rate is just not successful, so I've moved away from it. I just find this is what I found.
I would concur with that. A lot of pike on dead bait, they take it short.
Yeah.
And you can either lose them from the start or else halfway through the battle they tail walk and
that's it. Yeah.
bidding.
Yeah.
Now to be Mr. Consistent at 3 times I should say, you were number 2 on the podium. That's an amazing achievement. Out of 350 odd anglers participating in that Lough Garn Classic, but you've also won other major tournaments.
Yeah, I have. Well, it's a bit of luck too, Alan, and it's just having a feeling about an area
I don't believe
and just concentrating.
that. You are a brilliant angler,
It is.
and you do your homework.
Well, I do my homework all right, yeah. The night before in bed, I can't sleep or nothing like that.
And he puts the hours in.
And you know that, Ken.
I do know
you
that,
meet him
absolutely.
regularly.
Yeah.
He puts the hours in.
He's taken more than 1 pike out of my left ear, you know.
So okay, I'm going to referee this between the 2. I can see the sparks coming out. But what I always am intrigued by, Barry, is that to be consistent on a number of different waters is a hell of an achievement. Because you're not dealing with a Lough Ree or a Lough Derrivar or whatever. You're going to lakes far flung hither, thither and yon.
Yeah.
And you still are coming 1, 2 or 3 on the podium. I know that.
But it's just having the mindset in your head of the water you're going over, the depth of water you're fishing, how deep your bait's fishing, and having a good feeling about an area and concentrating that. Like the pike don't feed all day every day. This is what I try to tell people. Like just because you're in an area and you haven't got a bite for the first 2 hours, it doesn't necessarily mean there's no pike there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
are you interested in structure? Like, are you looking for drop-offs, points, secondary drop-offs, weed beds?
Definitely.
Or are you interested in food shoals that you might see on your sonar?
More so structure. More so structure, yeah. You can
so you fish structure?
This time of the year, food shoals, you can reap the rewards of fishing over them. You can get plenty of pike, but in the summertime and other times of the year, I find staying away from the food fish, you'll actually get more fish and bigger fish.
That's fantastic. Barry's going to be staying on with us later on, folks. Now, I just want to remind you all, our pixelated photo competition is for all you folks out there who take photographs of a trophy shot with your lovely fish in your arms. Maybe it's a great reminiscence, I should say, of a great event. It could be 3 or 4 lads together, your wife or whatever, down on the shore of a lake. Or it could be something quirky with a bird or something sitting on the end of your rod. But send us in your photos. We want you to do that. We've had a marvellous response to date. There are great prizes to be won. Now, if you're not in, you can't win. So send them in to pixelated competition at fishtalk.tv. Now, next up, we have what I would call our Fish Talk Challenge. And our 2 men here in studio are going to be put through their paces.
We weren't told about this, Alan.
And
we were not told about this. I object.
I've created a wee bit of a different situation this week. So you've got 2 identical 7-foot bait casting rods. Before we do anything, I'm going to get up the lures and show you what the ground rules are. And if you feast your eyes here, Mr. Cahill Hughes, you have to knock him off his perch. Next in line is Pascal, editor of Zondra Brochet magazine and a great fisherman. I was with him this week. He came in at 157. Paul Burke from Inland Fisheries Ireland had great difficulty, and my understanding is he's still at it. He hasn't stopped doing this. I'm not joking, really. He's still at it. So, without further ado, we're going to put you through your paces. This is a bit of fun, but it's also to let me see who needs to go and get your eyesight tested. So, you get a lure each.
A lure each.
You're going to get an old Dennis Pye type float.
Okay.
Okay. and a lure. So what you need to do is thread your line through here,
Okay.
up through the guides, down to the center of that, and then do a braid knot and tie it on that.
All right.
And I'm going to take, excusez-moi, I will take this and do it. Now,
When do we start?
I'm going to count you down. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
So Barry's off to an absolute flyer. You can see youth here now really paying dividends. Absolutely going well, Barry. Now, you haven't done this, I say, since about a minute ago.
No.
You're fairly confident at it. But it's actually quite difficult, you see, when you're under the hot lights of the studio
Under pressure.
and you're under a wee bit of pressure.
I'm doing Paul Burke on it here, I'm afraid.
Half a minute gone, folks. 30 seconds. You're doing very well, actually, because you're way ahead of the posse. But the braid is not as easy as it seems because it's very soft and pliable, and you don't have the stiffness, say, of fluorocarbon or mono to actually assist in doing this. Well done, Barry. That was clever. I haven't seen that done before.
Yeah.
He uses his mouth like a vacuum, sucks it through, and is way ahead now in the lead. We're coming up to 1 minute now. I think our friend Cathal Hughes' title is going to be knocked off the perch. In fact, I'm very confident he's going to be knocked off the perch.
Yeah, horse.
So 1 minute, 9 seconds, 10 seconds. You're going well. And our doctor here, Ken Wheelen, is now getting through. He's threaded right through all the guides, and he's going through the Dennis Pye dumbbell float.
Yeah.
Barry's finished, and he finished at 1 minute 28:05. And I think, yes, that was a very respectable time, actually.
I'll try to do what Barry did.
And I'll just get to one side here. 1 minute 28. So, Barry, Darby. And how are you going, Ken?
Okay, if I can get it through the dumbbell.
If you get in a little bit first and then suck it.
Yeah,
in.
suck it,
It's
yeah.
very hard. It's not very stiff.
It's not stiff, it's
No.
very thin.
Have you ever used the drifter floats?
No. Probably not through enough.
Is this the same float?
Dr.
as last
Ken
week?
Wheelen now, yeah. You're coming up to 2 minutes, Dr. Ken.
Yeah.
Mr. Darby had a very clever idea. He sucked
Yeah,
it
he
through.
sucked it through. Yeah, mine wouldn't suck for me. No.
Blocked, is it? Oh, yeah, you're now you're going, yeah.
Yeah, well done, well done, well done.
You'd block
It
the-
isn't
block
easy.
the float on me, you'd
It
block
isn't
the
very
float on
easy,
me.
yeah. Well, they're actually brand new out of a bag I had.
Not at all. I don't believe a word of that. Don't believe a word of that.
But it's an interesting exercise. It's
is
like
good.
just a bit of fun,
Yeah, yeah.
but it also shows how difficult it often is when your hands are cold out in a boat doing things.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't understand how actually difficult and tedious it is trying to put very pliable braid or whatever through very small apertures and then finishing off in a nice knot.
There we are. That's it.
2:39. So Ken did it in 2:39. So your colleague of old days, Paul Burke, is still at it. So Barry, you didn't quite knock him off his perch.
You did very well.
Cathal Hughes is still there, 123. Barry Darby's next in line at 128.5, followed by Pascal Larissier at 157, Dr. Ken Wheelen at 2:39, and Paul Burke, I believe, might be still at it. Maybe he's having a cup of coffee and gave up on it. But anyway, well done, folks.
Good fun. It was
For
good
being
fun.
a bit of
Well
crack.
done.
Well done, Barry.
At least I came second again.
Yeah,
When I'm around Barry, I always come second.
you're on the podium. You're on the podium.
You won the important one.
That's
the boat.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You never forgive me for that.
did.
You never forgive me
Now,
for that.
Still have
Ken,
nightmares.
you have come through a background as well of fisheries like I did and
Yeah.
aquaculture, and in a way you've a scientific background, whereas I went to Denmark, then on to Norway, and I qualified as a fish master over there, so it's very much the practical side.
Yeah.
And I always say to Barry, if I go over a stream, like most anglers, I'm addicted to it. I have to peer down over the parapet and see what is down swirling in the waters below.
Oh, yeah.
Are you the same?
I'm
addicted?
worse, though. I'm worse.
Has your wife ever threatened to leave?
Well, yeah, absolutely, constantly. You know, I'm waiting for the week when she doesn't threaten. No, but my fascination is with rivers, and my fascination is with the life in the rivers.
Yeah.
And the most extreme example I can remember was a friend of mine insisted that we go steelhead fishing, or what they call complete misnomer, winter steelhead fishing. So it was February time. It was bloody well snowing. It was snowing really hard. And we were out in this river, we're frozen stiff. And we stopped at lunchtime, and the guide was sure we were going to die of hypothermia. So he built this beautiful fire. We were supposed to gather around the fire and heat our hands. And he turned around, and his description, you know, there was this idiot of an Irishman, you know, up to his whatsits in water, digging down into the river and picking up these stones and saying, "My God, look at the stones."
We've cameras, or we'll sell us, or whatever's
so
there.
I have to look at the stuff in the
So
river.
you're still addicted to it.
And even when I was in Slovenia now a few weeks ago, I was delaying everything because I just was impossible to go down these little rivers without picking up stones and looking at what was happening. And just one point on that, which I think is really important to us. In 9 rivers in 10 days, I did not come across anything that indicated any source of pollution. And we were urban fishing on half of that time. And I said to the guys from the Freshwater Institute, "How do you do this?" And I hadn't realized it. But there is an agreement throughout the Alpine region that people keep their water clean, and every one of the villages have just bought into this. There's no legislation, there's no shooting people or anything else.
Fantastic.
It is absolutely just a matter of pride that the water is kept clean.
Isn't that a phenomenal
And I thought that was the way to go.
tribute to people,
And I
yes.
think it has a lot to say in relation to our
Yes,
current
yeah.
discussions
It does.
about water and whether we pay for water or not. Could we
yes,
not talk about it and try and agree
Yes,
what we should
yes.
do?
I think that, you know, when I look at my life in fish and fisheries, and it's been all throughout my life connected to fish, I see the way that Ireland certainly is now getting its act together, because I think we appreciate that we have a resource that's finite, fragile, and you can lose it so easily.
I would agree, and I think that certainly we're on the up now. And the biggest advantage that we have is the fact that the Water Framework Directive that took 15 years, and that was the way it was planned to be implemented, 2015, we have to do it, but we're doing it according to our own rules.
Yeah. Now tonight, I just want to say I've had a great time here with Ken, and thank you, Barry, for coming along. And Barry, I know that you'll have many other tournaments to win along the route before you ever hang up your boots when you're 96 years of age.
Hopefully, Alan.
And I really appreciate you coming in tonight and sharing with us.
Pleased to be
Now,
here.
I want to again apologise to you all that we had a technical difficulty. It had nothing to do with our crew here. It had nothing to do with the people last week in iBub who gave us wonderful satellite communications that enabled us to broadcast from a very remote rural setting on the shores of Lough Erne. But however, my own terrestrial provider that I've been with now for some time, guaranteeing me a certain service, let me down today and let us down here in our studio. So hopefully next time this glitch will be ironed out. There are many people behind the scenes that I want to thank. I want to thank my good friend Gary Finnegan, our producer and director tonight. Lorna Finnegan, who's been our floor manager and also our social media manager, and she's also been doing all the various jobs behind the scenes. We've got Tony here as well tonight, who's helping out. But also, I just want to thank you, the viewers out there, for your loyalty, for looking in. Keep watching. Send us a tweet at Fish Talk.TV. Watch us on Facebook and then send us a message there, or you can watch back on youtube.com/Fish Talk Live. Now next week, I've got some amazing people coming to visit with us here, but also others that we're going to link up with live on YouTube. So take care, have a good night, good fishing for the week ahead, and we'll see you this time next week.